Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's tutorial is on how to make this elegant fully lined shift dress. It is a beginner friendly tutorial, and if you would like to see how I made this, please watch to the end of this tutorial. And I also have a tutorial on how I made the welt pocket with flap that I have on this dress, and if you'd like to see how I made that also, I'll be dropping the link to that video in the description box. The first thing I did is to fold my fabric for the front into two and the back into two using my biggest body circumference, which is the hip, plus extra 3 inches. But for the back I added another 1.5 inches, which is my zipper allowance. So the back is 1.5 inches bigger than the front. So I've placed my front on fold exactly on the line I ruled out for the zipper allowance. All measurements will start from that line. So starting from there, I have quarter of my hip circumference plus extra 3 inches. Then I'll be taking my vertical measurements. So the first thing will be to rule out my start line, and my start line is also the shoulder line. All measurements, vertical measurements, to start from this line. So from the start line, which is the shoulder line, I'll measure 8 inches, which is half of my round armhole measurements, and this would be my chest line. So from the shoulder line to 8 inches, I have my chest line. From the shoulder line to 15 inches is my waistline, which is the half length. So from shoulder to 15 inches is my waistline, and I'm ruling across the measurements. From my shoulder, the start line, to 23 inches is the hip line. So I'm marking out this on two different points so that I can have a straight measurement, and I'm going to rule across this measurement. Then I'm going to take the measurement from the shoulder to where I want this dress to stop, which is 35 inches. I want my dress length to be 35. So when making yours, measure what you want. So I'm going to measure out 35 inches, and I'm going to add extra 1 inch, which is going to be my hemming allowance. So I've measured 35 inches plus an extra 1 inch for hemming allowance, and I'm going to rule across these measurements. So now, taking the length I want, I'm going to cut out the excess. I don't need this excess, so I'll focus on the measurements that is needed. So going through our lines again, I have the shoulder line, the chest line, the waistline, the hip line, and the length of the dress, then the allowance for hemming it. On the shoulder line, I'm going to measure 3 inches on the shoulder line, and then 8 inches. On the 8 inches point, I'll come down by 1 inch and connect it to the 3-inch point. So this will be for the shoulder slope. This is how I usually take my shoulder slope. Then on the shoulder line, I'm going to impute half of my shoulder measurement, which is 7 inches. I'll also repeat that 7 inches on the chest line. My across back is 14 inches, divided by 2 is 7, so that's why I used 7 inches. I'm going to connect the 2 points together, but I'll stop on the shoulder slope like this. Then on the chest line, I'm going to impute quarter of my bust circumference plus half inch, 0.5 inch is for ease. Quarter of my bust circumference is 8.5 plus half inch for ease. That will make it 9 inches. So I'm adding ease because this is a shift dress. Then I'm going to find the midpoint of this vertical line like this. I'll find the midpoint. So this will be for the back armhole. From that midpoint, I'll use a French curve to connect to the bust measurement on the chest line like this. So this is for the back armhole. For the front armhole, on the midpoint, I'll come in by half of an inch, 0.5 inch. Then I'll use the French curve. I'll connect the measurements of the bust on the chest line to this half inch I came in by, and then to the shoulder slopes. Just watch what I'm doing. I'll connect the 3 points from the chest line to the half inch I came in by, and then to the shoulder slope at the top like this. So you can see this is for the front armhole curve. Then I'm going to need allowance to sew, so I'm going to add 1.5 inches allowance. I want to use 1.5 inches allowance because I will be turning this with lining. Then on the waistline, I'm going to impute quarter of the waist circumference, which is 8 inches plus half inch for ease. Half inch for ease, making it 8.5 inches. Then I'm going to take the 1.5 inches sewing allowance. I'm going to connect the measurements on the chest line to the measurements on the waistline. On the hip line, I'm going to impute quarter of the hip circumference, which is 10.25 inches plus extra 1 inch. On the hip, I took 1 inch ease. This is because I want the hip to look a bit exaggerated. So on the hip, I impute quarter of the hip plus extra 1 inch for ease. Then I added the 1.5 inches sewing allowance. I'm going to connect the measurements on the waistline to the measurements on the hip line. Then on the hem of the length of the dress, I'm going to bring down the exact measurements I have on the hip measurements down to the length of the dress. So I'm bringing down everything. I measured what I had, 11.25. I brought it down. Then the 1.5 inches sewing allowance, I brought it down, and I'm connecting the measurements on the hip line to the measurements on the length of the dress, and I'll extend that into my hemming allowance for the dress. So you can see what I have. I've taken all these measurements. The next will be to take the neckline. For the neckline, I'm going to take a neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth for the back 1 inch. I want the neck depth for the back to be 1 inch, and I'm making a curve to connect the neck width to the neck depth. For the front neck depth, I want it to be 3.5 inches, and the neck width remains the same for the front and back, 3 inches. The neck depth for the front is 3.5 inches, so I'm making a curve for my front neckline. After this, I will take the allowance for joining the front shoulder to the back shoulder. So from the shoulder slope, I'm coming up by 1/2 inch. You can see what I'm doing. I'm taking 1/2 inch from the neckline, and I'll connect from the shoulder line, and I'll connect. Now everything is coming together. So the next thing I'm going to do, this will be to eliminate zip bulge. Okay, since I'm already adding a zip on the waistline, on the zipper allowance side, I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch. Okay, you can come in by 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch on the zipper allowance on that waistline. So after coming in, I'm going to connect these measurements to the chest line, like the slanted to the chest line and slanted downward. After connecting it to the chest line, I'm going to bring it down from the waist down to about 3 to 4 inches down and connect it out this way. So you can see what I have. So to avoid shortage, I'm going to replace this after all the measurements I've taken on the waist. So I'm going to add back the 1/2 inch I've removed on the side, and then connect it back to the chest line and then down towards the hip, and stop about the 4 inches I've connected when removing that measurement. Okay, so that everything would be complete and not having any shortage. So this is the measurement. I've taken everything for the front and the back. I'll go ahead and cut this out. So while cutting out, I'm just going to cut that measurement I took on the waist. Just watch what I'm doing, because I'm cutting the back first. So after cutting this, I'll cut the back neckline, I'll cut out the shoulder part, and then I'll cut out the back armhole, because the front and the back are together. Don't make the mistake of cutting the front first. So after cutting, I'm going to cut out this part that we removed for the to eliminate zip bulge, and then I'm going to split the back into two, because I'm going to attach zipper to the back. After this, I'll remove my back piece to cut out the front part. So for the front, I'm going to remove that measurement we added to avoid shortage. Is not needed in front, because what we did was only for the back. I'll cut out the front armhole and then the front neckline. So after cutting, this is what our dress looks like. So the next thing will be to cut our lining. So I'm just going to fold the fabric for the lining into two. Just place your back piece and your front piece and just trim out exactly what you have. That is what I'm doing. So after trimming it out, we are going to do a little bit alteration on the lining. From the hem parts, just go up by 1.5 inches. From the hem, go up by 1.5 inches, connect and cut out. So the lining should be shorter than the main fabric by 1.5 inches, so that when you sew, when you turn, you will not have the lining gaping, you know. So this is how it should be when you turn. Okay, that's how it should look. So to cut the sleeve, I'm going to measure from the shoulder slope. I'll measure down to check what I have on my armhole. So this would be what I should have on my sleeve head. I folded my fabric into two and then into four. I want to cut the two sleeves together. Then I'm going to measure out my cap height. I'm using a cap height of 4 inches. So I'm just measuring out 4 inches and I'll rule across it. On these 4 inches, I'm going to impute half of my round armhole, that is 8 inches. So I'm going to impute it here. Then I'm going to connect from here to the tip of my folded fabric like this. I'm going to find the midpoint of this straight line and then go up by 1/2 inch. Then from that 1/2 inch, I'm going to connect to the tip of the folded edge like this. Then the remaining part of this, I'm going to share it into 2 equal parts and then curve down to this point and then make an inverted S down to the 8 inches measurement. So you see what I just made. Okay, then I'll add my 1.5 inches sewing allowance. For the length of the sleeve, I would measure 16.5 inches. This is because I'll use 1 inch for my hemming allowance and 1/2 inch for attaching the sleeve to the dress. So at the end of the day, I'll be left with 15 inches. For the sleeve opening, I'm going to measure 9 inches and then take 1.5 inches sewing allowance. I took 9 inches because I want my sleeve opening to be 18 inches. So since my fabric is on fold, I measured 9 inches. I'll go ahead and cut this out. So if you want a detailed tutorial on how to cut a basic short sleeve, long sleeve or 3/4 sleeve, I have tutorials on that on this channel and I'll be dropping links to those videos in the description box. So I will notch this top part like this and then cut out the lining. And for the lining, I reduced the lining by 1.5 inches like I did for the bodice. Now it's time to turn with the lining. So I'm going to place the lining to the fabric, right sides facing each other, and then sew the neckline with 1/2 inch. After sewing, I'm going to notch round. So notching means cutting through, but not cutting through your seam, cutting very close to your seam but not cutting through the seam. So that's what I'm doing now. After notching, I'm going to go to the machine, turn, push the seam to the lining part and then top stitch, sew on it. So I've already done that. You can see my top stitch. I've top stitched. Then the next thing will be to turn the lining again, right side to the right side of your main piece, and then holding them together at this point and sewing. Okay, so I want to demonstrate this so that you understand on the sewing machine. So you pull them together because at this point the lining and the fabric are not equal. Just pull the two hems together and sew with 1/2 inch sewing allowance, right sides facing each other. So you should be sewing on the wrong side. After sewing, I'm going to top stitch. So top stitch means sewing on the seam you've already made before. So I'll push my seam I've made towards the lining and top stitch on it. You top stitch very close to your seam. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. After top stitching, I'm going to turn them right sides facing each other, the right side inward, and sew this side. So you're going to pull the lining to meet the main fabric at the top parts, at the armhole parts. You see what I did? So I'm sewing from the armhole part. They are meeting each other this way, so I'm going to sew them together. So I'm turning with ½ inch allowance. Remember that my sewing allowance is 1.5 inches, so I'm going to use ½ inch to turn with the lining, so that when I'm sewing I'll then be left with 1 inch, which I'll use to sew the front and the back together. So I'll go ahead and turn this side as well. So what I do to this is the exact way I'm going to turn the back pieces, the two back pieces, and even the lining and even the sleeve. So what I do here is exactly the same thing I'll do for the back pieces. After sewing, I'm going to turn to the right side. I'll trim out the excesses I have from I'm reducing my seam so that it will not be bulky inside. Then I'll turn it to the right side and iron properly. So what I do to this is what I'll do to the back pieces as well. I'll turn them out and iron very well. So this is what I have. You can see what I have, and I've also done the same for my back pieces. So I'm going to join them on the shoulder and then the sides, but before that I'm going to attach my zip to the back parts. Okay, so I'll have my zip. What you do is you place your zip where you want it to stop. You just mark that, note where you want your zip to stop, then you sew up the remaining parts. Okay, I don't want a slit on this dress. It's a dress above the knee, so I don't want a slit, so I'll just sew up this part 1 inch allowance and then install my zip. So I've pinned this part together, the zipper part. I've not attached it, so I'm going to show you how you join this. You place the shoulder part. Remember the seam allowance is ½ inch, right side to right side, and flip your lining to the back and sew this way, so you have a hidden stitch after sewing, and then you close the sides. For the sleeves, you see how I've sewn it. I'll do the same top stitch to the lining side. After doing that, you pull this lining the top should meet each other and then turn, and that's it for the sleeve. Okay, so now back to the dress. So I want to show you how you can neatly join the shoulders together and have a neat finishing. So you see what I'm doing? I'm placing them right sides facing each other, the main fabric to the main fabric. At that neckline part, they should meet so that it will look neat. I've pinned that point and I've flipped my lining to the back. So just watch what I'm doing. Okay, you take your time. You want this to align when you sew. Okay, so you take your time to align it very well, and then when you want to sew, remove the pin. If you sew on the pin, your needle will break. Then you're going to sew on ½ inch allowance. That is what is added. Unless you added more than that, you'll be sewing with ½ inch allowance on the shoulder. So I'll take my time and sew and make sure that the lining, everything is matching. Take your time and sew. So what I do to this, I would repeat it for the other shoulder. Okay, so you can see I've sewn it. You see it's matching, and when you turn to the back, it's looking neat. Everything is looking neat. Okay, so I'll repeat that for this other shoulder. So after this, I'm going to take my body measurements and then sew up the sides. Okay, remember my allowance for the side is 1 inch, so that's what I've taken. I just took the 1 inches and pinned. Please pin together to make sure that everything is properly aligned and matching. When you pin, you can actually see exactly what you have before you start sewing. So I'm just closing up the sides. Okay, sewing on my allowance. You can see I marked it out. There's nothing wrong with marking out your allowance and sewing and following it. This would be helpful, especially if you're a beginner, so you can just follow what you marked and pinned and sew. So guys, if you have watched up to this point and you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please click the subscribe button now to subscribe. Also turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload a new video, and don't forget to like this video so that others can see this video. And to all returning viewers and subscribers, I love you guys. You guys are amazing and I appreciate you all. So now back to the sleeves. I've turned and ironed. This is what the sleeve looks like. The next thing is just close up. Okay, measure what you have on your sleeve head so that it will match with what you have on the armhole opening. Then close up your sleeve with 1 inch allowance. Then you attach your sleeve. To attach your sleeve, you turn the sleeve to the right side. The fabric is on the wrong side. You put the sleeve into the fabric like I'm demonstrating. You see what I'm just doing into the dress. I'm matching the seam on the sleeve to the seam on the dress, you know, the armhole side. Okay, pin them together. Then the notch I made on the sleeve, I'm pinning it to the shoulder joining. Then you can pin everything round. You see how I've pinned it before I start sewing. So after pinning, you take your time and sew. You sew with 1/2 inch or even less than 1/2 inch to attach your sleeve to your dress. So that is just what I'm doing, as you can see. As you're sewing, remove your pins. Don't sew on the pin, please. Remove your pins before you sew. As you're getting close to a pin, you remove it as you're sewing. So when I get to where I started, I'm going to just sew there and then backstitch, and that is it. I would repeat the same thing to join the other sleeve. So after sewing, you can see when you pin, you can see the result. Everything will match. The seam on the sleeve matches with the sleeve, the seam on the dress. So guys, this is what our dress looks like. Very, very beautiful. You can see this is a simple dress to make. You can line your dress very easy and have a very neat finishing. Okay, so you can see the dress. You can go ahead and overlock that joining on the sleeve part. So guys, I have video on how I made this work pocket with flap already up on this channel, and I will drop the link to that video in the description box so that you can check it out. So guys, this is what the dress looks like. We've come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye.